Elliot Mason knew exactly how many breaths he had left today. 137. The translucent display on his wrist cuff flickered with each exhale, the numbers ticking down in harsh blue digits. He'd become an expert at shallow breathing, at making each oxygen credit stretch as far as possible. 16 hours until midnight reset, and 137 breaths remaining. It would be close. Outside his apartment window, New Denver sprawled beneath a perpetual haze. Not quite smog, not quite fog, but a sickly amalgamation that the government insisted was atmospheric stabilization. What remained of the Rocky Mountains stood as hazy silhouettes, more memory than reality. His cuff vibrated. A notification from Central Allocation. Elliot sighed involuntarily before catching himself. 136 breaths now. Citizen notice. Your productivity assessment has been adjusted. New oxygen allocation. 12 credits daily. Reason: failure to meet quarterly civic contribution targets. Appeal options available for premium citizens only. Elliot stared at the notification until it faded from the screen. 12 fewer breaths per day. 125 starting tomorrow. His job at the Department of Resource Distribution wasn't exactly conducive to oxygen conservation. As a Level 3 allocation analyst, he spent his days reviewing and processing oxygen credit appeals, most of which were automatically denied by the system. Each denial required his thumbprint, his eye scan, his complicity. Elliot checked the time. 7:43 a.m. The morning commute would cost him at least 20 breaths, even with the subsidized transit masks. He reached for his coat and the sleek black breathing apparatus on his nightstand. The transit mask looked almost elegant, curved to fit perfectly over the nose and mouth, with its corporate slogan etched into the side. Aerotech, every breath counts TM. The Denver Metro glided silently through the city, its sealed windows displaying reassuring messages about air quality improvements and upcoming oxygen credit promotions. Most passengers wore their masks, eyes locked on personal devices. No one spoke. Speaking wasted breath. Elliot took his usual seat near the back. Today was Wednesday, which meant Hannah would be on the train. She worked in hydroponics management, one of the few growth industries in a world where most farmland had become unworkable. She always boarded at Lakewood Station. Her transit mask was different, a previous year's model, slightly bulkier with visible repair patches. Budget-conscious, like everyone except the platinum tiers. Elliot removed his own mask momentarily, calculating the oxygen expenditure of a simple greeting. "Morning," he said as she settled into the seat across from him. One precious breath used. Hannah's eyes crinkled above her mask, a smile. She tapped her wrist cuff twice, activating message mode, and typed quickly. Her words appeared on Elliot's cuff a moment later. Hannah. "Morning. Don't waste your credits. I saw the allocation reduction notice. Everyone in my district got hit too." Elliot nodded, then typed his reply. Budget cuts or motivation? Hannah. "Both probably. The Air Quality Festival is next month. They always tighten allocations before public events." The train glided to a stop at the Central District. Outside, the massive glass tower of the Oxygen Regulatory Commission dominated the skyline. 128 floors of gleaming windows and authority. Elliot's workplace for the past 7 years. "See you tomorrow?" he typed. Hannah nodded, eyes smiling again above her mask. The 47th floor of the Orc Tower housed mid-level bureaucracy. Hundreds of cubicles where workers processed thousands of applications, appeals, and adjustments daily. Elliot's station was identical to the others. A desk, a terminal, a chair, and a dock for his personal breathing apparatus. He connected his mask to the office air supply, a perk of government employment. While at his desk, he could breathe freely without depleting his personal credits. The system beeped as it registered his employee ID, and the daily allocation of files appeared on his screen. At 9:17 a.m., the message that would change everything arrived in his work queue. Urgent. System maintenance required. Authorization. Platinum 7. Report to Sublevel 12 for emergency protocol review. Bring personal breathing apparatus. Duration estimate, 4 hours. Oxygen compensation, plus 25 credits upon completion. Elliot stared at the message. Sublevel 12? He didn't even know the building had sublevels. And Platinum 7 authorization came from the highest echelons of government. 25 bonus oxygen credits made the decision easy. That was an extra day of comfortable breathing. He disconnected from the office supply, secured his mask, and grabbed his ID badge. The elevator required special clearance for sub-levels. Elliot's badge was scanned, his retinas verified. The elevator descended smoothly, numbers counting backward, L, B1, B2, all the way to B12. The doors opened to a sterile white corridor, empty except for a single door at the end. Elliot approached cautiously. His cuff showed 127 breaths remaining. The elevator journey had been more stressful than he'd anticipated. The door slid open automatically as he approached. Inside was not the maintenance room he'd expected, but a vast circular chamber filled with towering server banks. In the center stood a single woman in a blindingly white suit, her oxygen mask smaller and more elegant than any Elliot had seen, nearly invisible against her face. "Mr. Mason," she said, her voice slightly mechanical through her premium breathing apparatus. "Thank you for your prompt response. I'm Director Winters." Elliot had never met a director in person. They occupied the top floors of the building, where rumor had it the air was completely pure, requiring no filtration or credits. "I was told there was a maintenance issue," he said, each word carefully measured to conserve breath. "There is." Director Winters gestured to the servers around them. "But not the kind you're thinking of. What I'm about to show you requires absolute discretion. Your file indicates you're trustworthy, efficient, and most importantly, in need of additional oxygen credits." She led him to a terminal in the center of the room. "This is the allocation master control. From here, we can view and adjust every citizen's oxygen allowance in real time." The screen displayed a map of the city, divided into color-coded districts. Green for platinum tiers, blue for gold, yellow for silver, orange for bronze, and red for basic. Elliot lived in an orange district. "Look at your neighborhood," Director Winters instructed, zooming into Elliot's residential block. "Average allocation, 148 credits daily, barely enough for sedentary activities and a short commute. Now look at Summit Hills." The screen shifted to a deep green zone, where massive houses perched on the remaining viable hillsides. "Average allocation, 827 credits daily," Elliot read aloud, then caught himself. Another wasted breath. "Yes, more than 5 times what your district receives. But here's what you're not meant to see." Director Winters pressed her palm against the screen, entered a complex code, and the display changed. Now actual usage data appeared beside the allocation numbers. Summit Hills, allocation 827, usage 312. "They're using less than half their allocation," Elliot whispered. "Precisely. And where did the surplus credits go? Not back into the system." Director Winters pulled up another screen, a massive storage facility on the outskirts of the city. "They're stockpiling, building reserves while the lower tiers slowly suffocate." Elliot stared at the numbers, his analyst's mind quickly calculating the discrepancy. "There's enough surplus to double everyone else's allocation." "Triple it, actually," Director Winters corrected. "The oxygen shortage is largely manufactured. Yes, atmospheric oxygen levels have declined due to environmental degradation, but not to the extent that justifies our current rationing system. The credit system was implemented as a temporary emergency measure 15 years ago. It's now the foundation of our economy and social hierarchy." Elliot's mind raced. The implications were staggering. "Why show me this? I'm nobody." "Because I need somebody in data allocation who can help me correct this imbalance. Somebody who understands the system from the inside, who knows how to make adjustments that won't trigger alarms." "You want me to redistribute oxygen credits?" Elliot asked, incredulous. "I want you to save lives, Mr. Mason. Lower-tier districts have seen a 34% increase in respiratory failure deaths in the past year alone. Meanwhile, the platinum tiers are hoarding enough oxygen to save every one of those people." Elliot glanced at his wrist cuff, 118 breaths remaining. "What exactly would I have to do?" "Small adjustments. Incremental changes that stay below the system's anomaly detection thresholds. Nothing that would draw attention. We start by targeting the neediest areas: seniors, children, those with medical conditions." "And if we get caught?" Director Winters' expression hardened behind her nearly invisible mask. "Then we face oxygen deprivation sentencing. It's a risk I've been taking for months, but I can't continue alone." "Why me?" Elliot asked again. "Your file indicates multiple instances where you've approved appeals that should have been denied. Small ones, 5 or 10 extra credits for people with documented medical needs. You've been careful to stay just within protocol, but the pattern is clear to anyone looking closely enough. You care. Elliot thought about his shrinking daily allocation, about the elderly neighbor who had disappeared last month after her credits were cut, about Hannah's patched-up mask and the children in his building who were never allowed to run or play because it consumed too much oxygen. "Show me what to do," he said. For 2 weeks, Elliot lived a double life. During regular hours, he processed appeals and denials as always, but twice a week, he would receive a maintenance request for Sub-Level 12, where he worked with Director Winters to implement their redistribution algorithm. The changes were subtle. An extra 5 credits here, 7 there. They focused on schools first, then medical facilities, then residential areas with high concentrations of elderly or young children. The system was complex enough that small adjustments across thousands of accounts wouldn't trigger automated reviews, and it was working. Reports from targeted areas showed decreased respiratory distress calls. School attendance improved. Even the perpetual haze over the lower-tier districts seemed to thin slightly, though that might have been Elliot's imagination. His own allocation remained officially reduced, but Director Winters had implemented a manual override for both him and Hannah, classifying them as system maintenance personnel, with a supplementary oxygen allowance. For the first time in years, Elliot could breathe freely. He and Hannah even spoke aloud during their commutes now, sharing actual conversations instead of tapped-out messages. "Do you ever wonder what's outside the city?" Hannah asked one morning, temporarily removing her mask in the relative privacy of their train car. "Beyond the air quality barriers?" "Sometimes," Elliot admitted. "My grandfather used to talk about camping in forests, about air so clean you could fill your lungs completely without thinking about it." "Do you believe him?" "I'd like to." Hannah leaned closer. "There are rumors in hydroponics about communities in the mountains, people who've developed air purification systems independent of the credit network." Elliot tensed, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "That's dangerous talk." "So is what you're doing," Hannah whispered. "You think I haven't noticed? The subtle changes in allocation patterns? The improved conditions in the lower tiers? Someone's adjusting the system." Elliot's blood ran cold. "Hannah, I'm not threatening you," she said quickly. "I'm thanking you. My nephew has asthma. Last month they increased his allocation by 12 credits daily. It's made all the difference." Relief washed over him. "I can't confirm or deny anything." Hannah smiled. "You don't have to. But whatever isn't happening, I want to help." With Hannah's involvement, their redistribution efforts accelerated. Her position in hydroponics gave her access to agricultural oxygen production data, information that proved invaluable in identifying additional surplus sources. But as the weeks passed, Elliot noticed troubling anomalies in the system. Someone was countering their adjustments, reducing allocations in the same districts they were trying to help. "The algorithm's been modified," he told Director Winters during one of their sub-level 12 sessions. "Someone's noticed what we're doing." "Impossible," she insisted, reviewing his data. "The changes are too small to trigger automated review, and only 3 people have clearance to manually adjust the master allocation tables." "Then one of those 3 knows." Director Winters' expression darkened. "We need to accelerate our timeline. If they've identified the pattern but haven't arrested us yet, they're gathering evidence. We may have days, not weeks." "What's the plan?" Elliot asked. "We go public, release all the data, the stockpiling, the artificial shortages, everything. We've been collecting evidence for a mass disclosure." "That's suicide," Elliot protested. "Not if we release it through the right channels. I have contacts in what remains of independent media. Once the information is public, they can't easily reverse the allocation increases without confirming the accusations." Elliot wasn't convinced, but he nodded anyway. "When?" 2 days. We need to compile the final data package. Can you access the executive allocation records?" "I'll need Hannah's help. Some of it's routed through hydroponic systems for security." "Do it," Director Winters said. "And Elliot, be careful." The next morning, Hannah wasn't on the train. Elliot sent a message to her cuff, but it returned undelivered. He tried to focus on his work, processing appeals with mechanical efficiency while his mind raced with possibilities. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she'd been reassigned temporarily. Or maybe she'd been caught. At lunch, he risked calling her residential unit from a public terminal. The automated system responded coldly. The citizen you are attempting to reach has been temporarily suspended from the communication network. If this is an emergency, please contact your district compliance officer. Temporarily suspended. The euphemism chilled him to the bone. He needed to warn Director Winters. Abandoning the rest of his workday, something he'd never done before, Elliot headed for the elevator to sub-level 12. His badge was scanned, his retinas verified, but this time an error message flashed on the screen. Access denied. Security clearance revoked. They knew. Elliot turned to leave, planning to exit the building and somehow contact Director Winters from outside, but 4 compliance officers stood blocking his path. Their masks were the intimidating, heavy-duty models worn by security forces, with mirrored face shields that revealed nothing of the humans beneath. "Citizen Elliot Mason," the tallest one stated, "your presence is required in compliance processing. Please surrender your personal breathing apparatus." Elliot clutched his mask reflexively. Without it, he'd be entirely dependent on whatever allocation they decided to give him during questioning. "Is this about my allocation appeal?" he asked, feigning confusion. "I filed the paperwork last week. This is not about your allocation," the officer responded flatly. "Surrender your apparatus immediately, or we will use appropriate measures to secure it." Elliot considered running, but where would he go? His oxygen credits were monitored city-wide. Without his mask, connected to his personal ID, he would effectively be holding his breath until capture. He slowly removed his mask and handed it over. Immediately, his cuff activated, displaying his remaining breaths. 103. A countdown to suffocation if he couldn't resolve this quickly. "This way," the officer directed, leading him not to the regular compliance offices on the 23rd floor, but to a secure elevator that required their specialized clearance. The elevator ascended. P1, P2, P3. All the way to P8, the platinum tiers of the building. Executive levels. The doors opened to a lavishly appointed office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The air was noticeably different here, richer, easier to breathe. Standing at the window was a tall man in an immaculate black suit. "Mr. Mason," he said without turning around, "do you know why the oxygen credit system works so effectively?" Elliot remained silent, conserving his breaths. "It's not about scarcity management, though that's the official purpose. It's about control. When you control something as fundamental as breath, you control everything." The man turned, revealing a face Elliot had only seen on government broadcasts. Chairman Reynolds, head of the Oxygen Regulatory Commission. "Your recent activities have been concerning," Reynolds continued. "Unauthorized allocation adjustments, attempts to access restricted data, collaboration with known subversives." "Where's Hannah?" Elliot demanded, unable to stop himself. 100 breaths remaining. "Citizen Hannah Chen is being processed appropriately, as is former Director Winters. Their fate depends largely on the outcome of our conversation." Elliot's mind raced. Former Director Winters, already stripped of her position. "What do you want from me?" 97 breaths now. Chairman Reynolds smiled thinly. "Your skills, Mr. Mason. You've demonstrated remarkable aptitude for navigating our systems, implementing changes that evaded detection for weeks. We need people who can think creatively within the framework of absolute loyalty. You want me to work for you? After what you've done?" 94 breaths. "I want you to understand the larger picture. The oxygen credit system isn't merely about allocation. It's about population management. Resources are finite. Difficult decisions must be made. Letting people suffocate isn't a difficult decision. It's murder." 89 breaths. Reynolds sighed. "Idealism is a luxury, Mr. Mason, one you clearly can't afford." He gestured to Elliot's cuff, where the numbers continued to decrease with each agitated breath. "You have 2 options. Join our executive team, help us refine the allocation system to be even more efficient, and enjoy platinum tier benefits, including unlimited oxygen for yourself and Citizen Chen, or face oxygen deprivation sentencing with the others." "And Director Winters?" 85 breaths. "Her fate is already determined. The question is whether you'll join her." Elliot looked out at the city below, the hazy districts where millions struggled for each breath, and the clear green zones where the privileged few hoarded what should have been a universal right. "I need to think." 82 breaths. Of course, but don't take too long. Your current allocation won't last much beyond this conversation. Elliot turned away from the chairman, staring out at the mountains in the distance. His grandfather's stories about forests and clean air echoed in his mind. Hannah's whispers about independent communities beyond the barriers suddenly seemed less like dangerous rumors and more like a lifeline. If he accepted Reynolds's offer, he and Hannah might survive, might even live comfortably. But millions would continue to slowly suffocate. If he refused, they would almost certainly die. But the data they'd collected might still find its way to the public. Elliot made his decision. "I'll need certain guarantees," he said, turning back to Reynolds. "Written assurances of our safety and status." Reynolds smiled. "A pragmatic choice. My assistant will prepare the necessary documentation." As Reynolds turned to summon his assistant, Elliot moved. In 3 quick steps, he reached the chairman's desk and pressed his palm against the executive terminal, using the access pattern he'd memorized from watching Director Winters. The screen flashed as his emergency protocol activated. All the data they'd compiled, the stockpiling evidence, the artificial shortage documentation, the executive allocation records, transmitted instantly to every public terminal in the city. Alarms blared throughout the building. Reynolds lunged for the terminal, but it was too late. "What have you done?" he demanded. Elliot smiled, even as the compliance officers seized him. On his wrist cuff, the breath counter had dropped to 67. It wouldn't be enough to escape, wouldn't be enough to find Hannah or help Director Winters. But maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to start a revolution. As they dragged him away, Elliot took one last look at the city below. On the massive public screens visible from the window, data was already scrolling. The truth about oxygen credits revealed to all. His breath counter continued its relentless countdown, but for the first time in years, Elliot felt like he could truly breathe. If the signal reached your consciousness, comment, subscribe. And now, goodbye and see you next time.